I'm Batman.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Get to the chopper!
Discussing movies, this is Brian's review show.
Well, you did some pushing of your own, John.
They drew first blood, not me.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
We better get back, because it'll be dark soon, and they mostly come at night. Mostly.
Go ahead. Make my day.
Bond. James Bond.
Hello there, and you're very welcome to Brian's review show. On this podcast episode today, we'll be discussing Top Gun Maverick, the sequel to the classic 1986 film Top Gun. And the film is released, of course, this week, and it's directed by Joseph Kosinski and written by Erwin Kruger, Eric Warren Singer, and Christopher McQuarrie. Now, Christopher McQuarrie is, of course, part of the Mission Impossible series, and it's, of course, from the story of Peter Craig and Justin Merckx. It's a sequel to the 1986 film, and the film sees the return of Tom Cruise as Captain Pete Maverick Mitchell, a test pilot, alongside Miles Teller, Jennifer Connelly, Jon Hamm, Glen Powell, Lewis Pullman, Ed Harris, Monica Barbour, and Val Kilmer. Now, the film is set 36 years after its predecessor, and the film follows Maverick's return to the United States Navy Strike Fighter Tactics Instructor Program, also known as Top Gun, where he must confront his past as he trains a group of younger fighter pilots, among them the son of Maverick's best friend, Goose. Now, there'll be some kind of I won't say spoilers because I won't ruin the film for people that haven't seen. There'll be some hints kind of stuff that might happen in the film, so there could be slight spoilers. But yeah, I was hugely excited to see the film. I rewatched the first film a couple of days ago. I've seen it before many times, the classic '86 film, and I went back to rewatch this, the first one, just to kind of get a sense of, that classic and that story and that character of Maverick. So if you haven't heard my review, I did a review of that, and it's available on all places you get your podcasts, and it's on our YouTube channel as well, Brian's Review Show, covering the first film. So I was really excited going into the second film, and because the first film was so fresh in my mind, it was the perfect time to go and see the second film. And I can gladly say that I thoroughly enjoyed the second film. I think it's a phenomenal achievement, considering the original came out in '86. There's been so much hype and expectation. And one thing about Tom Cruise, he always delivers when it comes to like going back to his old characters, whether it's Ethan Hunt in the Mission Impossible films, or it's in this case Maverick in Top Gun, or Jack Reacher in the Jack Reacher films. But a top performance from Tom Cruise. You can tell it's an awesome sequel, and the reason it's an awesome sequel for me is because it pays homage to the original film, but it doesn't try to copy the original film. There's hints and references back to the old film, but it tries to be its own kind of story as well, a continuation of Maverick and his life and the challenges he now faces. It's well shot. The whole, it's for me, it's a movie for the cinema. It really is. Tom Cruise has said in different interviews, he was asked during the pandemic whether the film should go into streaming, possibly, and he said no, this film is made for the big screen, and he's 100% right, because it's one of those films. It's just, to see it on the big screen, it just hypes up the intensity, hypes up the action. It's really brilliant. It is, like, I'm just kind of going through my own head, my own experience watching the film, and the first thing that struck me straight away was when I heard Kenny Loggins' classic tune "Danger Zone" played on the opening credits. It just immediately just brought me back into that world of Top Gun again. And then you hear the plane taking off from the runway, and just the whole, it builds up the atmosphere, and the whole kind of, you're getting into that world again of air fighters and in the navy and all this kind of stuff, and pilot fighters, and just that whole world is kind of, it's introduced to us again, and it's a welcome sight. It really is. Now, just to give you a bit of a background, development for a Top Gun sequel was actually announced in 2010 by Paramount Pictures. Cruise and Kilmer were approached to return in their roles from the original, as were producer Jerry Bruckheimer and director Tony Scott of the original film. But in mid 2012, Craig and Marks finished a draft of the screenplay, and Scott died by suicide, and the film's pre production was put on hold. But in June 2017, Kosinski was hired and wrote a new draft of the script, and principal photography took place from May 2018 till April 2019 in California, Washington, D.C., and Maryland. Now, when we first meet Maverick, he's actually a test pilot and he continues flying after 33 years of service. And there we meet Maverick kind of test this new plane, and then basically a character named Chester Hammer Kane, who's Maverick's superior, and he's actually played by Ed Harris. Now, Ed Harris and Cruise actually worked together on The Firm back in '93, and I actually enjoyed seeing Ed Harris as a solid actor in the films he's been in over the years. You know, if you look at The Firm or The Truman Show or Absolute Power with Clint Eastwood, he's always a solid actor, and he's good in this film. He's only in it for a couple of scenes, but it was actually a great surprise to see him in the new film, and he kind of takes up the role of sending Maverick off to back to Top Gun school again, and just introducing him back into that world again. But the first flight scene that Cruise is involved in, or Maverick is involved in, is just a phenomenally shot scene. It's so tense because the he's testing the speed of the plane, and the tension just builds up, and that's in the first couple of minutes of the film. So you're immediately, hooked into it straight away. And then later on, we're eventually introduced to Jon Hamm's character, who is Cyclone Simpson, Vice Admiral, and he's the commander of the Naval Air Force. And he kind of replaces Viper, who's played by Tom Skerritt in the original film. So he's kind of taken up that kind of role. And Jon Hamm is another terrific actor. He's of course probably best known for being in Mad Men. And funny enough, I'm kind of watching programs at the minute called All or Nothing. They're American football documentaries following a team throughout the season, and he actually does the narration for them. So he was when I hear his voice straight away, I'm like, oh yeah, I recognize that voice. So he's another part of why the film is very successful. The cast in this film is brilliant. It really is. Like Miles Teller plays Lieutenant Bradley Rooster Bradshaw, and he, of course, is the son of Maverick's late RIO and best friend Nick Goose Bradshaw. Now, Nick Goose Bradshaw, of course, was played by Anthony Edwards in the original film. So whoever decided to cast Miles Teller made a perfect job with this because he is the image of Anthony Edwards in the original film, and we meet him straight away. And there's obviously tension between him and Maverick from what happened in the past. And there's also another added layer of story between them two as well that's brought about throughout the film as well. Glen Powell plays another character in the film called Lieutenant Jake Hangman, and he is kind of, I suppose, the Iceman type character of this film, and he's another essential part of why the film works really well. Lewis Pullman stars as Lieutenant Robert Bob Floyd, and he's another character in the film that Maverick trains. Monica Barbour stars as Lieutenant Natasha Phoenix Trace, and she's also a mission candidate in the film. Jay Ellis plays Payback, another character that Maverick trains. Of course, Val Kilmer returns as Iceman in this film as well. You see him; he's referenced a great deal throughout the film. Of course, people that would be following Val Kilmer would know his struggles in real life, but he is a huge presence in this film as well. And there's a fantastic scene, kind of halfway into the film when Iceman and Maverick finally reunite, and it's an emotional scene, and it's a well acted scene from both Kilmer and Cruise, and it just the ghosts and the echoes of the very first film are brought out beautifully in that scene as well, it must be said. And Jennifer Connelly then is in this film. She's a big part of this film. She plays Penny Benjamin, and she's kind of the love interest of Maverick. So Kelly McGillis from the original film doesn't return. The only actors that return from the original film are Val Kilmer and Cruise himself. So that's a bit of a change from the first film. There's no sign of Kelly McGillis, or there's no sign of Meg Ryan either, who was in the first film. She played Goose's wife. Kelly McGillis was a big part of why the first film worked so well, and essentially the same reason why the second one works so well is down to Jennifer Connelly also being a part of that reason and success. Another, she's always a solid actress too to have in a film. Um, she's made great films over the years. Once Upon a Time in America in '84 with De Niro, and she made Requiem for a Dream, which is probably her most famous film. And I really liked her in Blood Diamond with Leonardo DiCaprio back in 2006. So she comes into this film playing Maverick's rekindled love interest, who's a single mother, a bar owner, and the daughter of a former admiral. Now, fans of Top Gun might recall her name being actually mentioned in the famous scene when they're doing the Great Balls of Fire piano scene. Her name is actually mentioned when Goose's wife is telling Charlie, played by Kelly McGillis, about Penny Benjamin, and Maverick is kind of talking about her in that scene. So she's kind of referenced in that scene. So her character is brought back into the sequel, and she works perfectly in this film as Maverick's main love interest. Yeah, I really enjoyed having Jennifer Connelly in this film, and she works, as I said, very well into it and into the story, and links kind of keeps her and Cruz have a great, terrific chemistry together as well. So this very easy to, it's a very believable storyline. Like the thing about Top Gun Maverick is honestly kind of the best example I can think of in most recent times is probably Cobra Kai, because Cobra Kai pays such homage to the original material that it was based off, which is the Karate Kid films in that case, and it respects it. You can tell the people that made Cobra Kai really respect the original films, and they kind of create their own story and worlds with these characters, but they also pay homage back again to the original material. And this is what Top Gun Maverick does. It pays, there's so many references to the original film. I think, to be honest with you, it really helps to rewatch the original one, or if you haven't seen it, watch the original one before you watch the sequel, because you'll enjoy it even more. Because there's so many different references back to the original. There's pictures of Goose and Maverick together. There's the recreation of the famous volleyball scene from the original film. Instead, it's American football they use. Um, some of the music as well. It's, as I said, Kenny Loggins' music, and the whole atmosphere that it's building up. And then Iceman, of course, has been referenced throughout as well. And there's actually a brilliant scene. It's probably one of the best scenes in the film for me. It's when Maverick goes back. He goes into a bar, meets Penny for the first time, and it's very a good humorous scene. And then we meet all the different characters that Maverick will eventually have to train. So this is the first impression he sees of all the characters. He sees Bradshaw coming, and then Rooster, Goose's son, and he kind of gets emotional when he sees him. And then he eventually, for other reasons, he gets thrown out of the bar or whatever. And then he kind of, Penny's kind of taking Maverick is kind of joking and everything and not being serious. And then there's a great shot then of Maverick actually looking into the bar, and it's kind of, he's like looking at a ghost of his past, and he sees Goose, his son, Rooster, playing Great Balls of Fire on the piano. It's a terrific scene, terrific sequence, and well edited, I think, as well. The music and Maverick looking in then and seeing, it flashes back then to the original scene from the original film when Goose and Maverick and Charlie and Goose's wife they're all singing Great Balls of Fire, and Goose's son is also in that scene as well. And then it just flashes forward then and sees Goose's son actually singing the song with his Navy team. And it's just it's a great scene. And then Penny's kind of looking through the window and sees Maverick then looking in and realizing that Maverick is actually very troubled, and it's like he's seen a ghost or something. And it's just, for me, that was one of the best scenes of this film outside of the aerial jet action sequences. I think that scene was, the scenes with all the scenes with Jennifer Connelly and Cruz together, they all work brilliantly well. They're all great scenes, they all add to the story. And that's one of the strengths for me of this film, is that that story is really strong and intertwines into the story and to Maverick's struggles and going back into that environment of being in Top Gun again and trying to train these students how to be tough naval pilots and to basically become involved in a dogfight if they have to. Yeah, Miles Teller as Rooster and Glen Powell as Hangman. They're really kind of modern characters. Like, as I said, Maverick is looking at basically him 30 years ago, watching these two becoming rivals in the classroom, and the whole Iceman Maverick rivalry is kind of lifted again, and then of course it's very personal for Maverick because what happened to Goose, and then Goose's son being there, and then the whole story of that. Um, just it's a very, it's a very well made film. The storyline is very strong, and it's as I said, it's there's a real love of the first film, and it's shown throughout. There's such respect for the first film, and but they're also providing Maverick with his own chapter and kind of continuing on his life and seeing where he is at, and then even Maverick on the bike looking at the jet plane, and it's all referencing back to the first one again. That's the point I'm making. It's just really brilliant stuff. Now, the mission that they're involved in, that Maverick has to train his students to do, is to bomb a uranium enrichment facility of an unnamed rogue nation, and they have to get in, fly, and in under valleys and like the whole radars. That's I think that's another strong point of this film as well, is that the technology has advanced so much as well that they can add kind of more. You're following the fighters, and if they're too high up, the enemy's missiles will get them and that kind of stuff. So you're kind of anticipating this action sequence coming, and the whole training aspect of it. The sequences they're brilliantly shot. You're like when you see that in the cinema on a big screen, it just I can't like until you see it on the big screen. Just it brings out the experience of it. It really is a terrific watch in the cinema. It really hypens up the experience. Like there's a terrific sequence when the students, they're not really sure what to make of Maverick at first because the first experience of Maverick is them seeing him in the bear, so they don't know what he's made of or how good he is with these modern jet planes, and he basically like toys with them and says, come on and get me," and see you have to do 200 push-ups. If you can't get me, then I have to do 200 push-ups and all this kind of stuff, and it's just terrific sequence and character development and all that. It's as I said, it's like it's a well in all summary, it is a well done film. It's an awesome sequence. It'll go down as probably one of the best sequels ever made. I would say there's a strong homage, references back to the original. I can't emphasize that point enough. Cruise is brilliant in this film. I think he's really hit his. He took this film very seriously because, of course, Top Gun was so iconic for his career, and he went back in very carefully to make sure to respect the original film so much, and he has done. And he's probably expanded the story even further. Jennifer Connelly is terrific in the film as well. Really enjoyed seeing her in the film. Jon Hamm is very good in the film as well. I think he adds a presence to the film. There's a constant conflict between him and Maverick throughout the film, but also an admiration of what Maverick can provide Top Gun. Val Kilmer, in the scenes he's involved in, is also brilliant. He has that emotional depth to the film as well, so he adds to the quality of it. Miles Teller is terrific as Rooster, and as I said earlier, whoever casted him in this film picked it spot on because he is the image of Anthony Edwards in the original film. It must be said, and also Glen Powell's character of Hangman. I thought Glen Powell was terrific in this film as well, and Lewis Pullman also deserves a shout, as well as Monica Barbora. And as I said, Ed Harris's character, although he's only in it for a couple of scenes, I have really enjoyed seeing Ed Harris pop up in the film as well. He's probably more kind of he's the first superior that Maverick is dealing with, and then he leads to Jon Hamm's character then, and it's well built, and like the thing Top Gun does right. It's not a rehash of the original really because there's different characters and there's a different storyline involved, and the technology has advanced so much that it's not a carbon copy of the original film. There is constant references back to the original film. That's why the one point I would highly recommend is that you watch the original film first before you go into the sequel, because it will hype up the enjoyment for you for sure. But yeah, it's a massive thumbs up for Top Gun Maverick. It is a terrific film and one definitely to see in the cinema. And of course, I don't know box office wise how well the film will do or what it's like at the moment, because of course the original film was the biggest film of the year when it came out in 1986. Whether this film can get there remains to be seen. Of course, it's a different cinema world now to what it was in '86. But I've no doubt that it will be a very successful film because there's such hype going into it, and because the reviews have been so positive, overwhelmingly positive for the film, that it will no doubt benefit its box office performance. And just finally going back to a point I made earlier about the flight sequences, like in the original film, the flight sequences were terrific for their time, like, and they're still great to watch now. 36 years later, they're still brilliant to watch the flight sequences in the original film, and just shows how good they were for its time. But the newer one, just they're a lot better than the original, fight sequences because the technology is so advanced and the actors are in the planes and you feel when they're struggling, you feel it big time, and you can see in their facial expressions when they're struggling and the height, and you're right beside them the whole time when they're doing maneuvers and turns and all that kind of stuff. So it's just a well shot from that aspect of things. It is a technically well shot film, from the stunts coordination to the flight sequences to the dialogue and to the acting. It's all top notch. It really is. And just a couple of trivia facts about Top Gun Maverick for you. Tom Cruise's involvement in this movie was on the condition that the real aircraft be used in the aerial sequences and not CGI. At the insistence of Tom Cruise, there are no green screen or CGI aerial shots in the film, and even the close-up cockpit shots are taken during real in-flight sequences. This meant that much of the cast had to undergo extensive G-force training sessions to withstand the physical demands of the G-force pressures during flights. According to Miles Teller, who plays Rooster in the film, the cast got to choose their own call signs. He chose Rooster because it was in the same family as Goose. Top Gun Maverick is dedicated to the memory of the original Top Gun director Tony Scott, who was in the process of developing a version of the sequel before his death. One of the longest time, 36 years between a film and its sequel in movie history. Tom Cruise is actually now older than Tom Skerritt was when he played Viper in the original Top Gun. During a July 2019 interview with Entertainment Tonight, Kelly McGillis said that she was not asked to appear in the movie. When asked why she thought she wasn't contacted, she said, "It was likely because I'm old and I'm fat and I look age appropriate for what my age is, and that is not what the whole scene is about nowadays. I much rather feel absolutely secure in my skin and who and what I am at my age, as opposed to placing a value on all that other stuff." And in reality, Miles Teller, who plays Goose's son, wasn't even born when the first Top Gun film was released. Teller was born in 1987, where Top Gun came out in 1986, 1 year prior to his birth. And this is director Joseph Kosinski's second collaboration with Tom Cruise, having previously directed Cruise in Oblivion back in 2013. So yeah, the music in the film as well, just to make note of that, Lady Gaga actually made a song for this Top Gun movie titled Hold My Hand. And One Republic also contributed a song called I Ain't Worried. And actually Hans Zimmer actually contributed to the film's theme score as well. Yeah, so a massive thumbs up for me for Top Gun Maverick, a terrific sequel. As I said, in short summary, the reason I think it's a huge success is, of course, Tom Cruise is a big part of that. Jennifer Connelly is terrific as well, and a lot of the supporting cast are brilliant. But the homages they pay to the original film, but also continue the story of Maverick, is what makes this film so very successful, along with the terrific action sequences and music and all that. So, well worth the watch if you haven't seen it. Definitely go and see it on the cinema screen, because that's the place where I think the experience is where it is at its best. I think that's why Cruise left it so long, to make sure this film ended up in the cinema, because that's where it belongs. Hope you enjoyed this edition of Brian's Review Show and covering Top Gun Maverick. Of course, the Brian's Review Show is available on all podcasts, wherever you get them, and also on our YouTube channel, Brian's Review Show. I'll be back soon covering more movies, but for now, take care and enjoy the movies.
I'm Batman.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Get to the chopper!
Discussing movies, this is Brian's Review Show.
Well, you did some pushing of your own, John.
They drew first blood, not me.
That's it, man. Game over, man. Game over.
We better get back, because it'll be dark soon, and they mostly come at night. Mostly.
Go ahead. Make my day.
Bond. James Bond.